Hello again, it's Tuppence and welcome back to another Froggy Friday video. So a couple of weeks ago I tried to make a cherry pie frog and it completely failed, so I turned that frog into something else. But I'm going to reattempt it, and this is going to be a slightly weird one. I'm hoping I can get a cherry pie frog. So the first frog I tried to make out of resin completely. But this time I'm going to be using some UV resin and some Aqua cast. So first I need to use this Let's Resin UV resin and some water beads. I've just got these sitting on a paper towel so that any of the excess moisture can dry out. And I'm going to use that to make my first layer. These hopefully will be the cherries in my pie. So I'm going to put some of the UV resin in the bottom. I don't want too much of this. I don't want these beads to bury themselves under the resin. I do need to be able to pick them out of the resin afterwards. Just make sure I've got enough in the head. Okay, now I can add the beads. I'm just going to use a spoon to scoop these in. Make sure that none of them are submerged. There's enough space between them and that they aren't all touching. As I'm adding more of the beads in, it's causing the resin to rise up, and so the ones in the middle are starting to get buried. So I just need to make sure that I move them so that they aren't underneath that resin. And then I'm going to pop it under my lamp for 5 minutes. Now comes the satisfying bit. I'm using a dental tool just to hook these out. It's like a little spoon. And if I can get that underneath them, I can bring them out whole, which is the aim. And I managed pretty well, apart from this one, which was really deep in the resin. So it started to break as I scooped it out. It just meant I had to keep scooping and bring out all of the remnants that are in there. You don't want to leave anything in there. So I carried on popping the rest of them out, and they all came out whole apart from that one. Last one. Okay, so once I got all of that residue out, I took a cotton swab and I went round the insides to make sure that there wasn't anything left and that they were all dry. Now I need to mix up some colours to fill in the cherries. I've got a purple and a red resin pigment from J. Diction, and I'm going to use that with the UV resin. So I'll pop some into my pot, and then I want 1 drop of the purple and a couple of drops of the red. I'll mix that together and see if that's the colour that I want. It's a bit more dark and purple than I want, so I'm going to add some more red, a couple more drops, and a little bit more UV resin. I think that's a much better cherry colour. Alright, I need a pipette, and I'm going to suck that up. I've speeded this up because it takes some time to get that up into the pipette. And then I can start to drop this into the little reservoirs. I'm only going to fill them up halfway, and then I'm going to cure this underneath my lamp. Now I can add the second layer, and I'm still not going to fill these all the way to the top. I want to leave enough room for the Aqua cast to drop in there. Aqua cast will not bond to cured resin. If I leave a space, I'm hoping that the Aqua cast will fill that space and it will lock the 2 layers together. I don't know if it'll work. If it doesn't, I can always glue the pieces if they separate afterwards, but I've got a feeling that it will help to bond them together. So I'll leave some space at the top, and then I'm going to pop this again underneath my UV lamp to cure. Well, I've got Aqua Cast Turbo. It's 150 grams powder and 60 grams water, and I'm hoping that will be enough to top up the rest of the frog. You have to work pretty quickly with Aqua Cast Turbo. It does set within 15 minutes, but this is sped up. I'm not pouring it in super fast. I'm going to use my spatula to spoon into the hands and the feet and try and make sure that I get that down into all the little toes and that there are no bubbles in there. I'll give it a quick tap to settle it, and then use a microbrush stick around the toes and the neck to make sure that there are no bubbles. Then I'm going to set it aside to cure. Okay, before I demold this, I want to put a coating of UV resin on the back just to strengthen those toes, otherwise I will definitely lose them when I try and demold this. So I'll spread this out, make sure that it gets all over the surface and especially on those toes. Then I'm going to pop this underneath my UV lamp for 5 minutes to cure. Alright, it's time to demold. Let's hope that the UV resin works. And I want to see whether I've actually got a good bond or if the Aqua cast has seeped underneath. Let's just get it off the front toes. Oops. Yep. Having the UV resin on there, it's not always a guarantee that you're not going to break the toes, but that's okay. I can rescue these and I'll glue them on afterwards. Let's have a look at the front of this. And okay, I do have some seepage. That's okay, I'm not worried about that. Because it is Aqua cast and it's on the shiny resin, I should be able to remove it, either scratch it off, or I'm just going to grab a baby wipe and see if I can wipe it off while this is still fairly damp. So it did take a little bit of work, but a combination of the baby wipe and scratching with my thumbnail, I was able to get rid of all of that excess Aqua cast and expose all of the resin. And it's cleaned up just fine. You can see behind those water beads where the Aqua cast has seeped in and it's locking that resin piece in place. So there's not coming apart at all. I do wish I'd used some red because obviously this is supposed to be cherry juice, but I can rectify that later. For now, I want to put a pie crust around this border. So I'm going to be using some air dry clay, and the brand that I'm using is Das. And I'm just going to roll this out flat so that I can cut some strips from it. Then I can use my metal ruler just to mark and cut a strip, and I'm going to make them about 1 centimetre wide. I'm going to use some bookbinding glue to help attach them. I'll run a bead along the edge of the Aqua cast, and then I can push the clay against that so that it stands up like a collar. This is going to be a fluted pie crust around the edge. I'll take it all the way around, pushing it against that glue. And the strip isn't quite long enough, so I just need to join the other one on. I'll cut it to size, and then I'm going to blend the pieces together so that it looks like one pie crust all the way around. Then I'm going to take a palette knife with a little bit of water and try and blend the clay into the Aqua cast. Make sure that everything is nice and smooth and it's firmly attached. I want it to look fluted, so I'm going to push a silicone tool in between my thumb and my forefinger to create a wavy edge along the outside. I'm going to continue to use a silicone tool to blend the edges into the Aqua cast so that it looks like one piece, and to neaten everything up, and then I'm going to leave this to dry before I can paint it. It's dry now, and I'm going to address the fact that this doesn't look like cherry juice. I've added some red pigment to some UV resin, and I'm going to add some colour using a thin coat over the surface. I'm going to let it pool along the edges, and I'll give this a couple of coats, curing in between. That looks a lot better. Now I want to add the classic lattice that you get on the top of cherry pies. So I've cut some more strips of the clay and I'm going to lay those across the top, weaving them as I go. I'm not sure how I'm going to arrange them just yet, but I'll play around with it until it looks pretty good and I can still see the cherries underneath. I'll interweave the strips and use my knife to cut the excess off so that it fits. And then I'm going to use a little bit of water and clay slip to attach these to the edge of the pie crust and to each other so that they don't move around. And I'm going to want to make sure that this dries thoroughly before I can move on to the next step, which is going to be painting it so that it looks like pastry. Okay, I've created a little bit of brown paint, a little bit like baby poop brown, using some brown and yellow acrylic paint, which I've mixed with some isopropyl alcohol. This frog has been drying so many times, I don't want to add any more extra water to it, and the alcohol will evaporate much quicker than any liquid that I use. I put it onto a damp baby wipe, and I'm wiping this over the surface, and I'm going to layer this paint up until I get the colour that I want. So I'm going to fast forward this, pop on some music, and I'll be back once it's finished painting. Okay, I like my cherry pie with cream, so I'm going to use some of this super Sculpey extra light. It's an oven baked clay, and I'm going to try and make a cream swirl, which I think I'm going to use almost like a hat. So I'm going to start off by trying to roll a sausage, and then I'm going to taper it so that it is thinner at one end. Okay, now I can coil this into a cream swirl. So I'm starting from the smallest end and expanding it out into a cone. Coiling it round. I'm going to lay this on the table and continue that swirl around. Tuck that in. Just make sure that the clay is sticking together. Rearrange that little top bit. Okay, I think that looks like a cream swirl. Let me try it for size. I think that's going to be perfect. Right, so I set this aside so that I can bake this. I just want to make something else. And that will be the cherry to go on the top. So I've got a screwdriver with a star end, and I'm using that to poke the holes. And I have a piece of paper string which I got from IKEA, so I'm going to use that as the sprig. I'll push that in. I'll just put the little line of the cherry, and then I can bake these together. Okay, that is all baked and cooled, and I'm going to dip the cherry into the same UV resin I used to fill those holes where the water beads were. I'm going to make sure that it is all coated. I'm trying not to get it onto the paper stem, but I do want to cover all of it. Now I'm going to give this a twist and let the excess drop off. And then I can use my torch to partially set this, and then I'll pop it underneath my lamp to finish curing. And this is probably going to require a couple of coats. While I'm waiting for that to cure, I'm going to glaze my pastry with acrylic varnish. So I'll give the whole of the frog a couple of coats of varnish, waiting for that to dry before I can attach my cream swirl. Froggy Friday is a weekly collaboration. It's hosted by Lisa, Girl in the Garage, Karen, the Dragon's Cave, Loula, Nerd Goblin Art, Gert of Gert Creates, and Tim, Bass Resonator. You'll find a link to the playlist for all of the videos in the description box below. Go and check everybody out and give them some love. So the frog is now dry, and before I add the cream swirl, I want to put the cherry on it. I'm going to use some UV bonding resin. This is from Let's Resin. I'm just going to put a blob on the side of the swirl. Then I can hold the cherry in place. And I'll use the torch that comes with the kit to cure it. Now I'm going to use some B7000 glue to attach this to the top of the frog. I'm just going to put a layer on the bottom of the cream swirl. And then I'll put this in place and leave this for 45 minutes until it's set, and it can carry on curing for 24 hours. And that is pretty much it. Please stay tuned. I'll put some photos up so you can get a closer look. And here he is, my froggy cherry pie with a cream swirl hat. It's definitely one of the more crazy frogs that I've done, but I quite like it. I hope you like it too. If you have liked this video, please give me a thumbs up, comment, share, subscribe if you haven't. It's free. You can scan that QR code on the screen and you'll be able to come back and see what I'm going to make next time. Thanks so much for watching. Take care. Bye.